All right, you're back. It is week 4 of the vault, and the last 3 weeks have been about video games. And I'm trying to make this series, varied, so I'm not always talking about video games. I could be talking about something useful. I could be talking about a product I like. I could be talking about a landmark, a historical figure, a video game, movie. And this week I'm going to go a little bit more serious. As you can tell by my shirt, we're going to be talking about Election Day. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you live in another country or whatever, Tuesday is the US election. And it is a presidential election, and this year it's a pretty big deal, potentially very historic. But a lot of people don't actually know how it works, which I totally understand, because there's a lot of steps, and it's not as straightforward as a lot of people think it should be. So, really, the campaigning starts like a year before the election, and candidates start putting together their campaign staff. They start participating in like party debates, like with other people of the same party, so that people can decide who they want their party's representative to be. And we hear a lot of talk about primaries and caucuses. What is the difference? What do they have to do with an election? So really the difference is who participates. So primary elections are for the American people to vote on who they want their candidate to be. And primaries get a little sticky because the rules are not the same for every state. So, for example, I live in Florida. In Florida, if you are a registered independent, you cannot vote in a party's primary. You have to be a Democrat to vote in the Democratic primary, and you have to be a Republican to vote in the Republican primary. Some states, however, you can be an independent and vote in a party's primary. So, look up what the rules are in your state, see what capabilities you have if you want to register as an independent, and see if voting in primaries is important enough to you to take a different approach for the election. Do what ultimately is right for you to do. Now, a caucus is when members of the party say who they want to represent the party in the election. And then after caucuses and primaries are done, it's time for the national conventions. So you may have heard of the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention. That is where the final decision on who the presidential candidate will be for that party is made. And that is also where that presidential candidate announces who their running mate is going to be. And their running mate is who is going to be vice president. And so we have our presidential candidates now, and we have our vice presidential candidates, and it's Election Day. What happens on Election Day? So, first of all, Election Day is determined by taking place on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So, for example, not that it matters, Election Day will never be on November 1st because it has to be at least the second day. Useless tidbit of information, but that's how they decide. So, you go to your polling place. Your polling place is determined by where you live. You have to vote in your district, in your area. Sometimes people vote early, in which case you vote at a specified early voting location, or you can mail in your ballot. So there's a couple different options as far as actually voting go. But for the sake of the video, we're gonna act like you're gonna walk into your location. So you go into your polling place, and it's usually like at a veterans hall or a community center or a church. Like, it's not going to be in the middle of Walmart or anything like that. And you go in and you show the poll worker your ID, and they give you a ballot. And the ballot looks kind of like multiple choice exam paperwork. It's got the bubbles and stuff, and you fill in the bubbles. So a lot of times, all the time, these ballots have more than just the governor or the presidential race. A lot of times they have policies, like amendments and stuff like that. They'll have local politicians. Do your research before you go into your polling place, and then be informed when you walk in. So you fill out all your bubbles. Do not take a picture of your ballot. Do not take a picture of your ballot. It can potentially invalidate your ballot. We don't want that. If you really need to take a picture and post it to social media, take it of you with your I voted sticker. Chances are your friends and family already know who you voted for anyway. So you turn in your ballot, and the poll worker has you slip it into the machine that counts it, and then you're done. You did your part. But what happens after that? So the votes all get counted for each district. And technically, when you cast your vote for president, you're not technically voting for president. You're voting for a group of people called the electors. And then the electors technically decide who the president will be. And that's pretty much, I mean, that seems simple, right? Maine and Nebraska, though, their number of electoral votes change. So, like, Florida always has the same number of electoral votes. I should have looked up how many it is. I'll look it up after I do the video, and I'll put it down here somewhere, how many we have. But it's always the same number. Now, Maine and Nebraska, their number of electoral votes changes, which I did not know until I was researching for this video, and that kind of annoys me, because I don't think it should change. But their number of electoral votes changes, and it depends on how many representatives they have in Washington, D.C. And the number of representatives that they have in Washington, D.C. depends on the last census. So the census is the thing, it goes out to Americans, it counts everybody, it finds out race, how many kids, where you live, all that stuff. So that information can potentially change the number of electoral votes in those two states. So that aside, you'll also hear, if you watch the news about the election, you'll hear them talking about battleground states. Battleground states are like Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania. They are the states that can swing an election. And I know this bothers a lot of people, and I get where it bothers them, because when you hear the newscasters especially talking about it, it really makes it sound like votes aren't even across the board. Like, when you hear them talk about battleground states, it makes it sound like my Florida vote is more important or more heavily weighed, more sought after than, say, someone in Rhode Island. Yes, Rhode Island is much smaller than Florida, but I can see where it bothers people, the language that is used regarding battleground states. Also, you may have heard something called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is low. It's illegal, it's low, it's playing dirty. Gerrymandering is when the boundaries of voting districts is changed. And it's changed in a way that the voting numbers that happen in that voting district changes. So say, one party wants this district, they might redraw the line around where there's more people of that party. So say, I'm going to make up party names because I don't want people to think I'm accusing one party. So say the Purple Party wants to beat the Brown Party in the election, they will take the voting district where maybe it's half and half purple and brown, and they will take it and they will add in a couple more neighborhoods where people are registered to vote purple. So now that district that might have been tied before now goes to the purple guys. And purple guy is on the brain still from my FNAF video, obviously. This is mega illegal. If you have, like, if that's not a good, if you're a visual person or I didn't describe it very well, if you go to the Gerrymandering Wikipedia page, it has an example with green and yellow squares. I didn't want to use green as an example because there actually is a green party in the US, so that's why I said purple and brown. And it will use a grid to show you what I'm describing, and it'll be a lot clearer. Anyway, back to our buddies, the electors. So the Electoral College, which you've probably heard of, is the process in which the electors from a state, that it's supposedly proportionate to the state's population, but they enter their vote for president and vice president based on how their state votes. And the votes all go to one. So, like, it's not going to be, you know, Florida has whatever number of electoral votes that I'm going to post down there. You're not going to split that 50-50. It's not going to be like, oh, well, you know, the Democrats get 5 and no. The entire state of electors votes the entire electoral vote group to one party. There are a total of 538 electors, and each elector, it accords to the state. We're going to do 538 on average, because remember how I said Maine and Nebraska can change? On average, 538. And the candidate who wins has to get at least half of the vote, of the electoral votes. So whoever gets 270 electoral votes wins the election. Now, as we've seen, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person who won the popular vote wins the election. I personally have seen it happen twice in my lifetime. One was 2016, and the other one was, oh God, what year was it? I don't want to say candidates. It's happened twice that I've seen. So some people say that the Electoral College is flawed because it doesn't actually do what the American people want. If 2 million more people vote for one candidate, that person should win, most people say. But I mean, for right now, it's the Electoral College. It's how it works. I don't know if they'll ever change it or if they'll change it in my lifetime. Anyway, so congrats. Your candidate wins the 270 needed Electoral College votes, right? So they're president now, right? They're president now. No. After the election, the people who are elected become the president-elect and the vice president-elect. And those are their titles until they are inaugurated in January. Inauguration day will always be January 20th, unless it falls on a Sunday. And prior to Inauguration Day, the president-elect, they name an inaugural committee. And the inaugural committee is responsible for every activity besides the actual inauguration. So there's usually like an inaugural parade where the president-elect walks through the streets. There's usually an inaugural ball, big fancy ball. And there's other activities that are all handled by this committee. And then, like I said, the president-elect and the vice president-elect are sworn in, inaugurated on January 20th. The oath is usually administered by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. There have been exceptions, and a president will always be inaugurated even if they're the incumbent. So, for example, if Donald Trump is elected this time, he will still have an inauguration, even though he had an inauguration in 2016. If Joe Biden wins this election and then wins another term, he will have 2 inaugurations. It's every term regardless of how. And that's it. That's how it's picked. So I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I am not going to tell you how to vote. All I'm going to tell you to do is please, 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 please do not stay home thinking that your vote doesn't count. Because if you stay home, your vote isn't going to count. You have to cast a vote for your vote to count. Please, 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 please. I cannot beg you enough. Vote. Hopefully your party's candidates' views actually align with yours and you're not just voting because you hate the other guy. But whatever reason drives you, vote. If you don't want to, you know, with COVID, say you don't want to be around a whole lot of people, vote early. Mail in your ballot. Also remember that if you have a long shift, like for some reason it's all day, your employer has to let you have time to vote. So if your boss, you know, say if you have a long shift or you accidentally, you know, say you work retail and you got stuck working a double, you have to be allowed to vote. Like, I don't know what the exact offense is for your employer if they don't allow you, but you are required to be allowed to vote. So please vote. Please don't stay home. Please don't. Especially not this year. Please don't stay home. Have a good day today. Have a good day on Tuesday. I hope you rock all of it. I hope that you are happy with the results. And I will see you next week. Bye.